let's have a look at the orbits. Okay, so before we move on to extraocular muscles, we will have a look at the bones that contribute to the formation of the orbits. First of all, the orbits are best described as kind of like pyramidal bony concavities that will house our eyeballs. Okay, they're part of the facial skeleton, and their bases, so the orbital openings, are going to be directed anterolaterally, so kind of to the front and to the side, whereas their apices, so the skinny part of the pyramid, is going to be down here at the bottom, so posteromedially. It's exactly the opposite of anterolaterally. And from back here is, of course, also where the nerve and blood supply to the orbits and eyeballs is going to largely be derived from. In real life, all of this is actually going to be filled with orbital fat, where the eyeball actually not is, because it provides additional cushioning. So as the orbit is kind of like a pyramid, it has a base and it has 4 walls and an apex. So let's have a look at those walls, okay? If we start off with the superior wall, that'll be up here. So part of the superior wall, or the roof, is the frontal bone. As you can see, a large amount of the roof of the orbit is actually comprised of the frontal bone, but also to a lesser degree, you have a little bit of the lesser bone of the sphenoid, or the lesser wing of the sphenoid over here, which is just about here. In life, the lacrimal gland will be found kind of in the superolateral aspect here. There is indeed a little fossa for the lacrimal gland. It's appropriately called the lacrimal fossa, and that is going to be within the orbital part of the frontal bone. Now, the thinnest of the walls of the orbit is going to be the medial wall. Okay, let me move this over here. Primarily, it'll be comprised of the ethmoid bone, which is this one here. If I click on it like that, you can see that is the ethmoid bone. And as I said, it's very, very thin. It's also referred to as the lamina papyracea, because this is a bone or a wall of the orbit that fairly easily fractures if there is sufficient trauma exerted on the eyeball. However, in addition to that, there are also contributions from the frontal bone, the lacrimal bone, this little guy here, and the sphenoid bone. The lateral wall, let me show it on the right orbit maybe, is going to be made up of the frontal process of the zygomatic bone. We know the zygomatic bone is fairly large, right? And also the greater wing of the sphenoid, which we can see from laterally here, and we can see it right here. And this is the strongest and thickest wall, which, as it's so far lateral, is kind of important because this is the wall that would be exposed to the greatest forces if there's trauma to the orbit. Last but not least, we have the inferior wall. That is down here. And the inferior wall is mainly made up of parts of the maxilla, but also made up of parts of the zygomatic bone and the palatine bones.